Hi, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of HCD Mindset, Season 2. Today, we are revisiting behavioral coding. Why are we doing that? You'll see, because there's always so many questions about it, and we really do think it's an underutilized tool, I think, right, Kathryn? Yeah, so
absolutely.
We're calling
There's
this,
a lot to be said.
Yeah, we're calling this behavioral coding 2.0. And certainly we'll probably talk about it even more in the future, but we thought it would be a good idea to revisit a little bit. Before we get started, who are we? What are we doing? If you're new to this, welcome. We just want to say who we are first. My name is Michelle Niedziela, and I am VP of Research and Innovation at HCD. As always, I'm joined by Kathryn Ambroze. Kathryn?
Hey everyone, I'm Kathryn Ambroze. I am the Manager of Behavioral and Marketing Sciences with HCD. We'll be sharing a bit about behavioral coding, but before we get into that, I'm going to let Michelle share a bit about HCD.
Cool. So those of you that are new and don't really know us that well, HCD is a market and consumer science research provider. And we use a combination of tools to really better understand how consumers are perceiving, evaluating, and responding to different types of stimuli. So we use all sorts of really innovative tools from neuroscience all the way through psychology and your traditional market research tools, as well as your more advanced market research tools as well, to really look at how, to help clients with product packaging, communications, anything that really interfaces with a consumer. We can do our work globally, online or in person, and anything from early stages of exploration all the way through validation, from product development all the way through marketing. So without further ado, let's launch right into this one because it is 2.0. If you want to learn more about behavioral coding itself, I would suggest going back, and look at our old videos to see the
Season 1.
Yeah, Season 1, behavioral coding, essentially 1.0, to really find out a little more about what behavioral coding is. But behavioral coding is basically a way to look at behavior. So you can look at the behaviors that people are doing. It's a psychological tool for the most part. It comes from studying children to really understand, okay, what are the children doing when they're behaving? What leads to a behavior? How many times does the behavior happen? You're really trying to analyze the behavior by observing it. It's an observational tool. So it includes methodological observation in order to review different types of behavior. And one thing in sort of discussing this that we realized is that a lot of people don't realize there's a couple different ways you can do behavioral coding, right? So there is qualitative and there is quantitative, and these things can be quite different, right? So we're going to talk behavioral coding in terms of these levels of qualitative and quantitative, which are quite different, right, Kathryn?
Yeah, exactly. And it's important to remember that they all fall under the same umbrella of behavioral coding, but there are some differences and, you can choose to use one or both for your study. And we'll get into that as we go on to the next slides.
Yeah, because the question really is, okay, there are these two types, but which one is most appropriate for you? You can do both, right? And sometimes you might have limitations and you should only do one, but you have to understand that they give you different types of information. So if we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this, zooming in on the different types of research here, we're going to start with quantitative research. So quantitative behavioral coding research really involves larger sample sizes, right? Because you're looking to quantify. Quantitative means that you're getting quantitative number amounts of things. So in this, in order to quantify it, because let's imagine that you're looking at videos of people shopping, right? There's a lot of different activities going on there, but you need to set specific behavioral codes. And it should be the things that you're most interested in, like how long, what's the duration, for example, that people paused in front of a particular shelf? How often did they grab something? How often did they compare prices on their phone? You're getting these numbers of things, length of time, frequency, exact order of operations.
Exactly. Right? And it can be something as simple as did they use their phone? Like a yes or no can also be something that is quantitative. And because you can see, I think in our Season 1 episode, if I'm remembering correctly, there was something about a coffee shop, because we had mentioned how behavioral coding can be a little bit like when you're people watching, because that's what you're doing. And you can say it was like, we use a crosswalk as an example, if the person stopped at the crosswalk or not. That is a yes or no option. And even though it's a 50-50 shot, that is something that we can quantify, and that's how you create your codes. So you have these specific codes that you develop in the research design phase, and you stick with them throughout, regardless of what the people actually end up doing.
Exactly. So I think an important thing to remember there is that you're only measuring those codes that you set out ahead of time, which are your areas of interest, essentially, right? You're interested in this particular type of behavior. But that means that you're ignoring the rest of the behaviors for the most part. You can make some commentary, but you don't really want to focus on those behaviors. You want to focus on the ones that you're measuring, right? The codes, because you're ultimately,
your specific codes.
You're limited, right? And the reason for that is because ultimately you want to do statistical analyses that are very focused and direct. So it's very purposeful behavioral coding. So those statistical analyses really help you to make comparisons between different situations, maybe different products, different stores, different whatever it might be, different people, right? So different groups of some sort. So in this way, you can start to discover patterns and compare averages, look at causal relationships, correlations. And because you've done it quantitatively and you have this larger sample size, you get statistical significance, and you're able to generalize the results to a larger population. And so this is a very sort of fact-finding way, right? And you can really make comparisons to really make business decisions on this, whether or not, say, one type of packaging is performing better. Now, a different way to do behavioral coding, which I think answers a different type of question, is really if we zoom in on the qualitative behavioral coding research. Now, this is a much, whenever you say qualitative, things that come to mind are like focus groups, interviews, things of that nature that are definitely a lot fewer people. It's focusing more on the person, right? And what they might do or do, how they might describe something. So it's a descriptive of everything that happens. And so you can imagine the reason it's a smaller n size is because you can't take 100 people and analyze every second of a 2-hour behavior that they do, right? It would take forever. You'd never be able to do it.
Exactly.
So in qualitative behavioral coding, it's like, so, okay, I'm going to look at 10 people, I'm going to look at 5 people, and they shopped in this store. And I just want to say, okay, these people, they did this more, I noticed that they stopped at the beginning of the aisle, whatever it might be, but it's very descriptive, right?
Yeah. And also, if you're using this, maybe say you're looking at a website, the way that somebody performs their use on a website, where their mouse is hovering, and that is going to be very different second by second, because it is a very fast-paced experience while you're looking at a website. So considering that, and you're kind of just following the sequence of events second by second, it is very time-consuming to really get all those second-by-second activities. And because of that, that's part of why it's such a smaller sample size, but it is a wealth of data that you are gathering from that small group.
But it does give you that opportunity to find the interesting things that maybe weren't in your codes if you were doing the quantitative portion. So you can get really great insights. And I think that applies really well for maybe trying to discover opportunities, right? So instead of like comparing prototypes where you're really looking for like a really hard comparison, this is really looking for something new, right? Noticing that people seem to be hesitating, noticing that, just some of their maybe emotional or behaviors just maybe it's just a little bit different that you couldn't pick up in a quantification. So it's very much like a
or maybe you find areas.
Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe you find areas where somebody is struggling that you weren't prepared, and you've been so close to this product, or you've been so close to what you've been working on for so long that it's something that you don't even think to check. So if somebody is struggling with, let's say they're, I'll just use that usability example again, they're struggling to find whatever task it is that they were seeking out to do, then that kind of helps you to say, okay, maybe we have to reformat. Maybe we have to make it change the location it is on the screen to really have it be a little bit more pronounced. So this can really help to, like you said, it give you those need gaps and give you an idea of where there can be places to improve upon, but also it can give you ideas about ways to grow as a brand and say, okay, this could be our next steps.
But it can also help you decide maybe even what the codes are that you'd be most interested in, right? So if you're not sure about the quantitative behavioral coding, what exact codes, sometimes if you just go in with a qualitative look first to see, okay, you know what, this is something interesting that I think we should really focus in on, then you could go back and apply that. Because that is an advantage. If you have like 100 people you're doing for the quantitative behavioral coding, you could go back and just look at 10 of those people, right, and do qualitative approach to get, you know, further insights, right? So, but otherwise, outside of that, I think that qualitative can be really useful for, you know, looking for opportunities, things that you might want to change in your product, just to look for something a little bit different, a little bit more interesting, you know, going beyond just asking people to, but actually looking at what they really do. So what are the pros and cons? I think an easy difference between quant and qual is basically the objectivity, right? And I think all these kind of things have to do with objectivity. But qualitative can be a little more subjective, because what's interesting to Kathryn might be different from what I find interesting in a behavior, right? So there definitely is some difference in subjectivity. Of course, with quantitative, you're set to those codes. And so it's very objective because it's only these numbers of frequency and duration and things of that sort.
Exactly. And just to go further, if you're trying to generalize what you found, because of those smaller numbers that you have with qual, it is harder to assume that's going to go for the entire populations. The statistics that you're getting for it might not be as significant as you would have with a quant, where you have a larger sample and you can really start to see the trends within a group rather than just individual basis.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's also that continuous analysis versus like looking at snippets. So in qualitative, you're looking at every second. Quantitative, you're, you know, really zoomed in on specific behaviors, getting detailed descriptions. You're not going to get that from quant. Again, you're not looking second by second. They're both really easy to do. So I think that that's really important to also realize too, because all you really have to do is set up a video camera, right? Now, if you are doing a quantitative analysis, you do need some way to code, and, you know, you could do it just by using an Excel spreadsheet if you put those codes in first, or you can use a tool like from Noldus. You can use their behavior analysis coding system. You can make direct comparisons with both, right? So you can compare different types of products, but, you know, in order to get statistical significance, to really show that there's differences, you know, in your comparison, quantitative is the only one that's going to be reliable, right? Because it is replicable and it's systematic. So because it's replicable, it's going to be a more valid approach, because you can keep doing it over and over again, right? And probably get the same results. But if you have, with only 10 people, you know, if you're doing qual, if you get a different set of 10 people, there may be a skew in who they are, and the behaviors could be very different. Or if you change the coder, right, you could get huge differences. Absolutely. So both really good tools, really great together. So that's really something you want to consider, that there is a special combination of being able to do both. If you're doing the quant, obviously you can always go back and do qual.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's important to remember that you can have both opportunity. You can take a subsect of your you know, larger population and do a little bit more of a deep dive if that's what you're interested in, to get a couple more you know, helpful findings for a directional approach where you're looking to go further. But it can be, you know, it is an opportunity to do both. It's not a one versus the other. And they do provide a lot of, you know, insightful information, but having both does create a little bit more of an overall understanding of what's happening in that experience, which is what's so great about behavioral coding.
And, you know, that's probably true for all research, that you should do a combination of qual and quant. If you are doing a survey, you should really have an open end at some point to just ask people, like, what do you think? You know, because it does give a flavor that you may not be able to get from your scales and your numbers and things like that. That, you know, something about this being able to let people have their voice can be very.
I mean, we say it all the time that you can't you can't mind read. The only way that you really know what a person's thinking is by asking them. So this presents a really great opportunity. And it kind of, like you said, it opens the door for most research that you want to be able to hear the consumer's voice in it and let them have a voice, because they're going to be the ones that are ultimately using the product and having opinions on it.
But also, you know, behavioral coding itself also gives that opportunity, because you are just observing what people do. And that can certainly be helpful when you try to make products for people that they're going to use, right? So really seeing how they behave with it is very important. So I'm really glad that we could kind of go a little bit further with behavioral coding, talk about it a little bit more, because everybody really should be doing it. It's super cool. With that, I'm going to wrap this up. This is a short one, but, you know, short and sweet, right? So if you liked what you saw, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Comment below that you loved it so much.
We're happy to have you.
Subscribe so that you can get updates on whenever we get new ones, because we would like you to get, you know, keep in the know with everything that's going on in consumer neuroscience and marketing research, all the new tools and discussions that we have. So thank you again for joining us. Please link with us. You can look us up individually or follow HCD on LinkedIn, subscribe to this YouTube channel, tweet with us. We tweet a lot. Visit our blog where we talk about all these things a little more in depth, and you can maybe even read more about some white papers we have on these subjects. But reach out to us anytime. We'd love to interact and hope to see you next time.
Yes, and if you have any friends that you think this would be of interest to, feel free to share it with them too. But like Michelle said, until next time, take care. Bye.
Bye.